Welcome back to the Geometric View, episode 45, season 4. Today we're going to go over plasma fractals, Helicon plasma and diatom morphologies, planetary morphologies and planetary rearrangements, circuits, returning circuits, Lichtenberg flow, infrasound, the Wood Wide Web, how everything is Lichten flow dynamics around the global electric circuit. Thank you for being here. I'm Buddy James, your host. Let's get into it. Let's get into the circuit. The best way to support us is on PayPal, goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you.
How you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. I gotta start making lunch for these kids.
Cool. Yeah, I'm going to do kind of a recap. It's episode 45, so I'm going to kind of pull a lot of things together and get into space fractals and a bunch of other fun stuff that I was talking about already.
Cool.
Awesome. It shouldn't be too long, so I'm just going to keep flowing from topic to topic, and then open it up like we normally do. All right. Welcome to the Geometric View, episode 45, season 4. Today we are going to go over plasma fractals, Helicon plasma and diatom morphologies, circuits, returning circuits, Katabatic winds, infrasound, the Wood Wide Web. We're going to get into basically a review almost, but even deeper dive into how everything is kind of connected through this Lichten flow dynamic of Lichtenberg type of branching, like lightning or trees, and how this Lichten flow dynamics is all over wrapped into the global electric circuit through things like the Wood Wide Web, and the lichen and fungus microvasal networks working as superhighways and tubes. So it really just comes down to tubes. Everything keeps coming down to these tubes and networks and systems and how systems connect. So as we get into the deeper geometries of how systems connect, you cannot avoid cobordisms and topological homeomorphisms. Now, basically, which is just talking about tubes. I started this geometry that I got into, and realized very quickly that it took me into. Turn my mic down there for a second. It took me into realizing that what I was studying as the Dougherty Network, is holes, how holes open and close, and what lives inside of holes. So I have let me share my screen. There we go. So I have some images that I shared in the chat here, because I create an image like I do for every single episode. Now these episodes are interdisciplinary and in an interdisciplinary style, which means it covers everything. It's universal mathematics. I don't really use the term universal that much, because I tend to find that the laws get broken as soon as someone thinks it's a universal concept, gravity or speed of light or whatever it is. So let me go to the first map that I created. Open this up. I didn't pull this one up in Illustrator, but I did clean up my computer so things are moving faster instead of how slow things were lagging before. Okay, so this is, if anybody is familiar with the third octave, or what is it? Right here. Sonic levitation. This is sonic levitation. This idea here, see that trifold right there and how it moves? Each one of these creates a different type of pattern. Now what they're doing is they're, I think, creating levitating the droplets using sound, and then producing a frequency. So it's a 3D somatic of a floating droplet, which is similar to a lot of the people that are doing simaglyphs and somatic science right now, but it takes it to a different degree and creates the three-dimensional topological geometries versus the surface tension geometries, and even the undertuck of the sublevel vortices that are happening, the vortexture underneath, when people do it inside of petri dishes. But see, I want to hit this concept home here, that these, when you take this concept of, okay, there's the second harmonic, there's the third harmonic, boom, fourth harmonic into quarters, fifth. Okay, now all these geometries are inherent in the Dougherty set, and what these are doing, if you were to actually create circles around the outer points of the geometries and inner points, you would find Bessel functions, and it would create the standard Bessel function. So if we were to take these geometries and spin them, as they spin, move them also in a vector in a certain direction, like this direction up or this direction down, you would get what I keep talking about in these episodes as Helicon physics. You would get Whistler mode waves. You would get, now, not necessarily if you took water and did it, but that's what plasma is doing. That's what solar energy is doing. And as it activates with our atmosphere and the birkeland currents break down into smaller eddies and smaller tubes, plasma tubes, and Whistler waves, and these literal plasma tubes. If you look at the last couple episodes with Ethan Clark, you'll see that these plasma tubes exist, and these tubes ultimately are the first. The resistance is in the heliopause. Now the heliopause creates the first drum of the Bessel function that starts these shapes vibrating, starts these energies in space to start breaking apart into individual other types of waves. Now these waves mimic the sound of frogs and ice cracking and whales and birds, and it's the sonics of the heavens. So anyway, what I want to show here is I have a presentation that I had put together before, but I didn't get to share the image yet with everybody. So we'll see if I can just pull up this image. If you want to check out the Helicon physics episode that we did, we also have a episode on the geometric view on Helicon physics. This is from that. This is the slideshow that I did. Okay. Now, I guess I'll just open it up because we're going to go through a little bit of this. Now, if you take that real life concept that we just saw of the acoustic levitation in the third harmonic, and you apply it to Helicon physics and the breakdown of a plasma flow, or the rheology of the breakdown of solar winds and solar currents, they start to create these eddies and flows and dynamics. And you see at the very center right there, the third harmonic, that same shape right here. This is what I wanted to show you, if you could envision it being rotated and moved into a vector towards a direction. Now you can look at this as looking down down a tube or a birkeland current. Either way, this is the same exact geometry that was already specified and so ever so eloquently by Dr. Donald Scott, that this is indeed what a Bessel function is, and shows so much more iterative fractal geometries of fractal plasma flows and fractal rheology, fractal rheometry, which is the geometry of the flow and the flow dynamics. So this, all I'm doing here is highlighting the first gate on every, which is the first circle here. Follow me. One circle off the center, one circle. So you go around and you just trace the lines, and you keep going down, and this is naturally in there. So I found this years ago, didn't know what it was, until finally insight and understanding come, and I start to realize exactly what it is that's happening here. So you can imagine that water droplet moving down, if they could move it with a tractor beam of sound like they do with sonic scaffolding. So this is what I'm talking about. This is like the brain or the gut microbiome of the Earth, and here's that shape again, just outlined by itself. And if you see, it's all based off of a toroidal forest of vortical. It's a vortical toroidal forest. The whole thing is kissing spheres and expanding fractal lattices, and that's what is happening omnidirectionally from the solar winds that cascade off. So for years, I'm like, this is a cascade geometry. This is projective geometry. What is it? And I'm like getting into all the quantum physics of it, the lenses, the studying all sorts of quantum electrodynamics, so many different ways I can explain this. But the way that it makes the most sense, and the way that it was actually reified and validated, is through electrical engineers. Because they work with grids, they work with lattices, they work with this type of in this type of understanding. So you can see it looks just like a fidget spinner, because once again, aerodynamics, spintronics, spin electronics, neuromorphic engineering. This is all based off of spin, and the center of spin is the fulcrum. So what I just blabbered on about is about some of the newest computers and newest type of computing, and also going to be moving in many biomedical fields for the new phase of what's actually going in bioinformatics, and even deeper into our biosecurity state that we're all entering into. So you take these, you twist them, and then there's an outer shape and an inner shape. There's a shape, a space, and a counter space, and they create different types of waves themselves. Now, I think I'm hitting that concept home. We can understand what that is. Now, these Whistler mode waves and these Helicon waves move along at night in this oxygen-rich wave that goes higher and higher and higher into space, into the ionosphere. And then as the oxygen comes back, because there's this huge wave that's out here, and they like to thrive. It's almost like they're alive and living. I liken it to the heavenscape of the morphogenetic field, which is actually just entanglement inside of these helical dynamics of these vortices. which is ultimately all just repetition of the same Bessel function drum from the sun, drumming over and over and over, creating, I'll get out of here, creating this map right here. This is how it all breaks down. Theodorian roots. It's all roots. Of course, it goes back to roots. How can it not be roots? And it breaks down into these fractal cascades of even the Wood Wide Web uses this plasma, electrochemical, sonic, and luminous substance of ether to communicate along the global worldwide Wood Wide Web, the global electric circuit. All of this is it's all tied in, and it's as simple as this is why when we look at the cymatics and we know we're onto something, and John Stewart Reed and the cymoscope and all this other stuff, we're looking and we're seeing that it's frequency, vibration, and motion, and it's not a substance-based universe. It's a universe in motion and elusive. It's an illusion-based universe. And you can go through so many different types of people's readings, especially since people just started coming on to more into the metaphysics of this, the mind state of what's really going on. You couple Helicon physics with neurophysics and how does sound actually work with the extremophiles? How is sound helping these extremophiles along the ocean bed and that exist inside of outer space and on other planets? There's extremophile bacteria, and basically I digress because so many thoughts I want to express inside of this episode, but it all fundamentally comes down to the doubling of the initial shape, and actually the inverse scaling of it. You take the shape, you put it inside of itself, repeat it inward, and then you get these circles that Russell shows in his diagrams, the circles that we see in trees when you cut a tree, dendrochronology, dendrochronography, when you cut a limb, one of our limbs, a leg, and everything has this layer-like type of onion type of progression. This is progressive geometry. There is a progression here, and there is a progression to how life unfolds. And we see the dynamics of how life unfolds in quaternion symmetry, and there's quaternion filaments that are connected. We are just now starting to get into some of the simple sacred geometry of it. The grand awakening hasn't even started. It's just, I mean, I already know where some of this stuff is going, and I do believe that geometry is going to be illegal again. Just like they when they put a certain symbol on a crest and an army charges another army, oh, you better believe that symbol is hated, but that symbol is meaningful, and that symbol is also powerful because there's power to geometry and shape. There is power to shapes. So this is basically the roots. These are the roots. You break down these roots and you start to get cascading interference networks that produce plasmoid interference that actually create bodies and points of Lagrangian points around suns and sources where matter just accumulates, because there's avoidance points. There's avoidance points and nodes and antinodes, and things come together in certain points. The exact predictive geometry of this network coming off of the square root inverse square scaling, it will show you why Neptune or Uranus is spinning in a different direction than all the rest of the planets. If there's a computer program to take this, the Dougherty set, which is the first one that I came up with. There's so much more to discover with all these other ones, but if someone can take this and scale it out massively, you'll get exactly the heliopause. You'll get the heliospheric dynamics. You'll get all of it is in here, and when you put the shape inside of it as it cascades, it starts to build these crystalline networks. It's all actually quasi-crystalline filaments, quasi-crystalline filaments that are nested inside of each other, fractal filaments. So let me go back to this image, and if we can envision all of this stuff that we're seeing on this, it is created from this one shape. This shape doesn't have a name yet. I've been looking for it. I don't really know the name. So I call it Helicon. At first I discovered it and created a three-dimensional shape. And I created a crystal. I turned it into a crystal here, and that is a tetrahedral shape. And this is what we're dealing with. This shape spinning on its axis, tilt on a point like this, R, what you see here with R, is T. See the shape in here? Now it's rotated and it creates a double torus, and it also a yo-yo. And also we know this shape to be extremely familiar with what's the word? Gyroscopes. Either way, this shape here. Aerodynamic. It's extremely aerodynamic, and it just keeps spinning. So when we look at the Squatterman, you see the Squatterman here. That's perfect Squatterman, 3D Squatterman. Now, what this is this. So this one solid shape spinning about an axis produces this whole structure we're seeing here as T. Now, this structure as T is A1 right here. T is A1. So you start with A1 and you put pressure on the top and you start to spin this shape, the single shape. Now you got to remember that it's that one singular shape as this spinning on a tilt with the axis right here at the pinch point kissing creates this and all of these other shapes, including Saturn. So the breakup of if a gaseous planet were to break up, and this is, we can also see the atmospheric dynamics working with very similar. If this were a sphere, you can envision this also being a sphere, because topologically, the homeomorphisms of this changing from one point to another, it's the same shape. It's just rotating. So imagine a planet passing over our Earth. And if it indeed is a gaseous, semi-liquid, subaqueous, whatever kind of word you want to throw in there, planet, planetoid, let's say it's Jupiter or Saturn passes over Earth, it pinches, becomes this shape as Squatterman, a spheroid. I should have started as a sphere, but I didn't even think of this concept until Ramon and Velikovsky and being introduced to the electric universe stuff. This is all super simple. So here they are together. You put a force down and they start rotating that way, or you put a force up and it starts rotating this way. And you can see those shapes right along here. J is M is P. So these are all the same here. But let's get back into the planet passing over our planet here. And if it were to pass over the planet, the gravitative effects on that spheroid would push it into possibly positions like this, and you'd see the pinch in the sky as that. Maybe not even the planet, but even if it was just the aurora around one of the planets, like Venus, the morning star. Now, this could be what similar to what the morning star happened with the transformation, because I lose track with what planets passing which planet inside of all this stuff in the Velikovskyan ideas and who's right and who's wrong. So I'm just kind of taking it in and listening to some of the geometries of it and hypothesizing and talking about it. So pressure comes down from the gravity of passing over the Earth, changes it into this shape, changes it more into this shape, and then ultimately it retains this last shape here as the gravity pulls down or pushes on it, and the electromagnetic dynamics too happens on the whole mass of the planet. It pulls this thing down and it turns these into rings. It pulls it off of the center, and this is just one rotation, literally one rotation of one singular shape in space. And then it creates a Saturn-esque type of planet. And that's when the pressure is equalized on both sides as it's being finally pulled away from the destination. Now, when it comes back over, it could do the same opposite thing and go reverse it and go back to I don't know, whatever happens when the planets pass each other. So I thought that was pretty interesting to think about. And we can also think about the same shape and the power of shape. And as I've been presenting the Helicon physics of it, why this shape? What's going on with this shape? Like, okay, there's an airfoil. Like, what's the best shape of something to float in space? A big, huge object. Usually we think it condenses into like a sphere or spheroid. Sure, all propagations or emissions are spherical propagations. I totally believe that. Same with Edward Dowdy and my man Jason Verbelli, Real Verbs. As well as Walter Russell. And Walter Russell talks about bodies starting as rings and then ending as rings, all solar bodies. So I don't know, that's another interesting point on it. But why this shape? And an airfoil is like on a plane and like a really good aerodynamic type of shape, but this involves spinning and a vector moving forward and or backwards simultaneously. Because if I were to highlight all of these, this is just highlighting one. There's 6 of these on top of each other right here. So it can pick and choose different sizes. And as it picks and chooses different sizes, as the charge dependent on different sizes, different networks, different tubes, increases or decreases, it just chooses a different size shape that's already there, prepared for it to carve or cavitate its way through the tubes. This is another image that can, I hope, shine some light on when you that idea of an airfoil, this looks very similar to an airfoil. And if we don't know what an airfoil is yet, I can pull it up here for us. Yeah, look at that. Looks like a fish swimming in the sea or in a river. Talk about Victor Schauberger. I mean, come on, guys. Everything is shape. Everything is shape dynamics. Whoops. Clicked on something. Shibir. So look at that. Pretty cool. Okay, now you can look at this and see the same kind of shape here. Now you can also take your hand and cup it ever so gracefully, like you're Miss America and you're waving at people and you're doing that tiny little rotating of the wrist. That shape in your hand is one of the most powerful shapes. How often do you see people hold their hands like that, except for maybe the queen, the princess, waving? That shape is an airfoil in our hand. It's meant to be a fin. It's like a fin. We can swim with it. We have fins too, when you cup them. And this is also the power of the horn of the light. I totally botched that. It's scripture. But there's a scripture that really made me realize these petals as airfoils. Now you connect three of them that are already inherent. See, all of these are just parts of circles. So lenses, Vesica Pisces, they're pinches of lenses where they overlap, and where they intercommunicate. It's communicative geometry, and it's also non-communicative geometry. But they communicate right here every time at these vector points that have where the charge or the energy or the pinch or the tensegrity or the tension is able to flip or twist, also known as what Dan Winter says is the pine cone kissing noses phase conjugation. So you have a series of raveling ribbons here. And these series of raveling ribbons are just one part of one of these Helicon waves highlighted here. Here's one of the tips, and here's one of the tips. Here's the counter space in between. Now, if I were to draw it out, you might be able to see it a little better, but what my point is here is all these geometries are interconnected, and they break down into individual ropes, tendrils, fibers that break down into more fibers. It's helical within helical within helical. Everything is helical. Entanglement is helical. The fractal inherent faster than light instantaneous communication of the gut bacteria in your belly that goes off when a solar emission or a CME happens with the sun. Instantaneous. That communication is there through this fibrous network of these woven filaments. And this is what we've been chasing down in the electric universe, talking about actually getting down to tangibility of it. When there's geometry, it becomes the most purest source of mathematics. It shows you that there's proof. So I'm proofing even more the concepts that I'm adding more validity and also building an actual biological, living, breathing computer system. This is the mathematics of the computing. This is how generational matrices happen, generational mathematics, one generation to the next. Fibonacci, 1, 1, 2, 4, 8, it's, or whatever. No, I did that wrong. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 11, whatever. So this scaling happens on all dynamics and in all dynamics, and our minds can't wrap around it until recently. With the computer age, Fractals unlocked the key for us to have digital antennas and actually be able to communicate and broadcast worldwide. It's Fractals that got us into the computers, that unlocked our potential into what being a spacefaring colonization, a universal entity, and really understanding our place here and our impact on the universe. So, excuse me, I had to take a sip of my coffee here. So, this simple fidget spinner geometry, I could sit here and talk about it for a long time, for sure. So I'm going to. So this is another image that I was debating on doing for the next show, or I just haven't brought it out yet. You can see the dual bowl shape here too. Bible, two bowls, Bible, two bowls, Bible, helical, Christmas ornament, onion shape, into the gates, counter space and counter space. So here's the space. Counter space of that is, right here. This is the space. This is the counter space. This is outside of it, but it also makes another fractal recursion of the same image. So this is what I keep talking about with Helicon physics and the geometries that are happening in the heavens that we can hear, and the northern lights, etc. This internet that we're hearing in the heavens is in the earth, and it's the same internet that the Wood Wide Web is communicating with, and it's happening through these neural networks, these microvisual neural networks of nothing but these propagations, spherical emissions, spherical propagations, emitting, recurring over and over and over, iteratively functioning inside of deep wells, inside of deep cylindrical wells, and then the brine that harnesses these sounds that come from the heavens through the ice and is reverberated even deeper into them, pops out identical shapes that are actually called diatoms. Diatomaceous earth is extremely good for you if you get the edible kind. Get the edible kind. Don't eat the other kind. It's all of layers of life is built off of diatomaceous earth. The cycles that lead into cycles of Ouroboros that we can't wrap our minds around, like the generational matrix, that's so hard for us to try to understand, goes all the way back to this simple idea of the shape mimicking the sound that it hears. The sound that it hears, it mimics and creates it. The frog mimics its mom, the duck mimics its mom, it recognizes its mom. We mimic it's mimicry. The whole thing is mimicry. So mimicry is the language of nature. You could say all creatures in the universe speak Aurora. Aurora is their language because it is outside in these outside of the earth, where these ideas constantly are bombarded through the earth, or these ideas are constantly moving around and into the earth and out of the wolf's mouth to move the rivers. This is cascade. This is trophic cascades. This is how all nature adapts and moves and conquers. And well, I mean, there's a lot of psychological crazy shit that humans do other than that to conquer. But like false preferences, and that's a big one. That's actually how people come to power. And we all just went through it with this election, false preferences. We had to choose whether we liked the preference of something or not, forced. So here I am finding these geometries right in the dead center of the core of this magnetohydrodynamic geometry, describing it in a way that I've never heard or learned anywhere, but I'm seeing it and I'm always chasing it down. It's been 17 years of chasing it down. Next year will be 18. She finally turns 18, the Dougherty set, next year. So hopefully she'll be all dressed up in white and ready for her bride, as we all are. And I mean that, because it's time to put on the white robes. Anyway, so let me go into some of these winds that I wanted to talk about. And let me look at my notes at the same time. We'll get into, maybe we can play a little bit more of this real quick. There's the third. I just don't want to get a copyright strike. Video's so short though. Look at that, it's gorgeous. Each harmonic has a shape, and each harmonic is, like I said, inside the Dougherty set, inside of Bessel functions, inside of the universal cosmic geometry. Awesome. We've gone through enough Helicon physics. So this is a story. It's story time. All right. I guess we'll see how decent of a storyteller I am. I know it's not going to be the best, but whatever. So apparently, this is a really big incident. Most people have heard of it. It's so creepy. And I think I remember it actually from when I was a little kid. They had it in one of those R.L. Stine, like, maybe not goosebump stories, but it was like scary stories. And I read one, and it was about these people that just disappeared and got lifted up into the wind, and their footprints just disappeared. That one's different, but this one kind of reminds me of it. So the Dyatlov Pass incident was an event in which 9 Russian hackers died in the northern Ural Mountains between the 1st and 2nd of February 1959 in uncertain circumstances. Now, this is super, super weird, strange, strange circumstances indeed. Let me see if I can go to images, cruise through some images while I try to remember what actually happened here. So these guys were professional mountain climbers, going off out into an area that was relatively safe, never had any avalanches, not one avalanche was recorded there. And this case was closed years ago. I believe, maybe in the 50s, maybe in the 70s, but either way, it was reopened last year. So that's really interesting. And we'll get into a little bit more about that. And why I'm talking about this episode here, this has to do with the Katabatic Winds that I mentioned in the beginning of the episode. So how many were there? 6? Something like that. So these people were out in their tent. Here's some pictures of their tent. This is what they found. This is what people found when they went there. So they were out and about, and I'll tell you what they found. They found this, and the tent had a slice in it, so it was sliced open from the inside, and the hitchhikers, or some not hitchhikers, the mountain climbers walked out of the tent without their clothes on and without shoes on, and just started wandering. I say walked. This is important because they didn't run. Like, that's weird. Okay, I'll tell you about a picture now. There's a picture that they have on their photo, and it's a bright light in the sky. It's the last photo that they had. There's a bright light in the sky, and which is kind of weird. They also have another picture here, right here, of someone that clearly looks like a person, a blurry photo of a person in the woods. But most likely that was just one of them. So, and this is a lot of where the Yeti came from too. They said that some people immediately said that this was a Yeti incident. It became, they closed the case and it became classified, if I remember right, and that's what made it immediately suspicious to everybody, that it was a government thing. And most people thought it was the Russian government anyway, because when people came up missing back then, they just assumed it was the Russian government because they're kind of mob style, you know. So it's actually kind of like America right now. If you speak or whatever, say stuff, sometimes they'll kill you, which we've heard about and witnessed some theories, some ideas. So those are the pictures, the only pictures that they had, certain pictures like this and stuff. And so now I'll go back to the story here even more. So they were, 3 of them were found like huddled, and I'm totally botching it probably. It's not 100% because I'm doing this by memory. So like, you can look it up on other things if you want to see more details, but I'm giving you the gist of it because I'm trying to get into the geometry of like what happened here. Not the forensic, the actual geometry of the mountains and like the range and the wind and stuff like that. So I'll just briefly touch some details. Okay, so there was severe. They found these people dead. One of them had shoes on, and they assumed that was the person that left first. Some people say that that person was a spy or a bad person, or someone that had a mission. They left the tent first with shoes, went out, started doing something, and possibly someone followed after him. He was trying to do his mission or completing his mission. And also at this time, the Russian government was messing around with these bombs that they drop and detonate right above the ground, and they have certain, which could explain the light that was on the photo, the bright light that was in the photo, but they went through and they say that there was no evidence of bombs or anything like that. They would have the fragments and other. But what was also really weird is that there was a whole bunch of radiation. Radiation was everywhere. So people were saying maybe it was an avalanche coming down the mountain, and they heard it, and they just cut the tent and ran out. Like, okay, but there's never been a documented avalanche there ever. So that's another speculation of people's theories. One theory, or the other two theories that I like, after I get into more of the story here, I'll tell you the other two. So their whole bodies were riddled with interior um, bruising and nasty, just horrible things that humans could not inflict on another human. Which reminds me of this was another theory. There was a tribe around there, a wild tribe, very dangerous, and they and I don't take harm to that. I don't mean wild tribe. You know what I mean? Indigenous tribe there or whatever, and they were dangerous, but there was no tracks leading up to them anywhere. Nothing. So they ruled that theory out, that it was the tribe that was over there, and the fact that the wounds that were sustained and the people were like humans couldn't have done a lot of the interior stuff that happened to these guys. Like one of them had one, if not two of them, had their tongues completely gone, completely missing somehow, and both of their eyes were gone. Both of their eyes were gone, completely gone. Some people took this as a sign that this was could be from one of the guys that was conducting the mission, that they thought with the shoes on, for a sign for don't say anything, don't speak, don't whatever you saw, don't speak, otherwise you're gonna die. But everyone ended up dying anyway. So yeah, that's about the extent of things. There's a couple other details that I'm leaving out that I might remember, but there was a couple other theories, and this is one of the theories here, that it was Katabatic winds, and these are winds that come down the mountain at night, cold winds that come down the mountain at night, and they say that it could have been such a high pitch type of a catabatic or infrasound type of wind that it could have created like a plasmoid, maybe possibly a pinch that created the light that they saw, sort of like sonoluminescence, or sorry, uh, yeah, sonoluminescence. That could have been it. But also, what about ball lightning? Ball lightning, So would they have heard ball lightning in the tent? Would they have, whatever happened? They say that maybe it was infrasound. Now, we got into a little bit of catabatic winds, but infrasound. Maybe it was infrasound. It was so loud and so destructive that they had to get out of the tent immediately and start running. Well, they didn't run, they walked because they saw their footprints. That's another good point. They were like going so slow that they were like walking inside of each other's footprints. Nobody was running, no like long distance between the gate of the feet. So this could have created infrasound, could have created like this horrible, unbearable sound where they just had to run and get away from it and hide. And it also could have possibly created um, the problems inside of their gut and inside of their bodies. And that's really interesting because the last episode we did on bats and sonar and returning sound waves. So I like that infrasound theory, but they also kind of debunked it because there's no real evidence out there yet, real quote unquote evidence that that kind of stuff can be created with infrasound. And where it would have come from. Okay, here's sources for infrasound. Aurora, boom, right there. So that could have came from an aurora. That would explain the light. And what about an aurora touching down to Earth, like aurora Earth combo? Is there such thing? I don't know. An aurora, an in-between exchange would be like a sprite almost between. So that's interesting. Avalanches, a source of infrasound, maybe an avalanche somewhere else. So yeah, those are some ideas. Now, they closed it and they just recently opened it back up in 2019. And the government, the Russian government said, okay, we're only opening it up for 3 different things. Either we're gonna investigate 3 different possibilities, and no matter what, it was not us. We as the government didn't do anything, so we're opening it back up. So apparently there's some stuff here that everybody's trying to get to the bottom of. And one of the 3 reasons was it was an avalanche, which we already been over that the whole time. I'm talking about it. There's no avalanches ever there, so probably not that. And that's why they're opening it up though. Either it's avalanche or they say it's a hurricane. Okay, where this place is completely nowhere near the ocean for a hurricane. And then there was another reason. I forget the 3rd reason, so maybe that'll give researchers out there an idea that want to get into that. So this infrasound and these hypersonic winds, I'd like to get into. Maybe I got some images here that will help explain some of how these winds can howl and whistle. I mean, they're named whistlers after all. And whistlers are made, we can make whistler waves and heat up different places in the ocean and all sorts of other stuff. We've been over that in other episodes, but this is a good example of how I can envision some sort of an infrasound scaling, creating a sound beam weapon, weaponizing this geometry. I don't know, that's ridiculous to even say, but that's what all bombs and everything else is. It comes down to the geometry of the matrix and what you're doing with it. And anyway, so I can see this as like a howling wind and just whirling and ripping its way down and even to the point where it pinches, becomes a plasmoid, opens up and comes down the mountain and just basically creates what are those things called? Anode tufts that swirl their way down the mountain. And now I'm theorizing on what happened. These are new ideas that I've never heard. And a lot of this stuff, they don't talk about plasmoids possibly. And, these whirling dervishes coming down the mountain as these types of geometries. So I'm trying to put this mystery together too. And I'm seeing that this all has to do with when it pinches. And also here's another little anecdote, big anecdote and facts. There was a bunch of people that called in and saw the light that night from different angles. So indeed something was going on there. And it would be cool to see it's going to be cool to see what they conclude here, because they just opened it up, and I don't know when they're going to close it back up, but 1959. Crazy. So you take those geometries and those sounds and you keep compounding them and doubling them and doubling them and doubling them and put it, and that's how you get a cycle, a circuit, and a return circuit in the same socket. That's what rotation and counter rotation of these filaments and interfilaments inside of the toroidal network of the same Bessel function expanding outward over and over inside of inverse square logarithmic scaling. You get sound beams, sound beaming, sound scaffolding, mind scaffolding, connecting the heavens to the earth. I mean, this sounds like New Jerusalem stuff to me. We can do it. I alone can show us a lot of really cool stuff and geometries along the way, but we're an organism, so let's stitch together this. Let's stitch ourselves together with God. That's what the final process is God communicating with mankind again and being part of the same system. You know, one in all in one. Oh, here's another good one of that. That you can see the nesting real well here inside of each other. It's another way of looking at it. When I said that there was like hundreds and thousands of them, yeah, the whole thing is filled with these y-axis, these y sockets, these y circuits, these tetrahedral y circuits, and you get one limb pointing in a certain direction and spin it, and that baby's booking. She go, oh he go. Get the beautiful lenses here. Looks like mushroom caps. Phyllotaxis of highlighting different points of it. A bunch of different little plasmoids. Just like you get ocean creatures that are thin fabrics using their own propulsion mechanisms as the circuit itself mimics the propulsion of the jellyfish and the Magnetosphere. So yeah, I just wanted to show that one concept with that image. So you got the space DNA, you got plasma DNA, you got braids, you put the Bible together and you get all sorts of different dual toruses. Here's the Bible again. And the dual torus network. Give me a minute, it seems to be freezing. Oh, there we go. Showing a returning circuit, returning circuit, and the flow is inside of it. And you slice that in half. You slice this down a cross section of that, and you get the same Bessel function geometry of the trees nesting. And it can only nest in certain size diameters inside of each other due to harmonic octave exchange. Harmonically, they have to acoust, they have to communicate. Communicative geometry is the circuit. The circuit's always trying to complete itself. So back to the story. This could literally be anode tufts. In anode tufting, we've talked about this before. They do little dances. little plasmoids and plasma that does little dances and tries to complete the circuit. And I can see these little plasmoids chasing down people, energy balls chasing down people, because they're trying to seek the path of least resistance. Or if it's negatively charged, it's going to seek positive, and it's positively charged, it's going to seek negative. If it's cold out and there's the only warm one thing right there, that plasmoid's probably going to come and interfere with you. That's plasma interference. So these anode tufts, let me see a video of it here. Oh, look, yeah, we got wall came popped up right there. Anyway, there's some really cool videos of the dancing anode tufts. Ooh, look at that. And it's what the sun does, and it's how ultimately our souls are probably inside of some sort of vortiferous ether, vortices, vortexture, luminiferous ether. This, our souls and our spirit, and when we die and when we go up into the sun and into the universe and into the sky, and we dance like sprites, and our energy is moved and exchanged with the whole universe, there's tufting dynamics with all of that. And I believe that tufting dynamics is the same geometry of the spin and all the fun geometries of the birkeland currents and the Bessel functions and the Dougherty set and the Dougherty networks. It's all super fun. So yeah, that's it. That's my theory of what happened to these kids, these cats. Poor, I'm sorry to tell it like, it's a tragic story, but it's sad and mysterious, super mysterious. So here's some more. Severe storms can cause it. Nuclear chemical explosions. Microbarons. I don't even know what that is. Meteors can cause it. Okay. Oh, here we go. Vortex sound generation. Radial core vibrations. Infrasound. Okay, we got infrasound right around the vortex coming out. And that's why it sounds like a train. Yeah. Core bursting. Infrasound audio. Yeah, going out from the center. It's cool. Shear instabilities. Audio. It looks like a ring current. There's a boundary layer. Instabilities, audio, infrasound. So that's really cool. Tornado infrasound. Formation and information. I've been painting a painting of multiple vortices and tornadoes, winds all working together with shamans and people steering the wind and the weather. Actually turned out decent. I haven't finished it yet, but almost kicked it out in a week. So yeah, here's the cone dynamics, conical dynamics of the infrasound. So now we can go back to images like this and see the infrasound on the image. We'll stop being two images. Sorry guys. Sorry this episode actually got cut short. So thank you for being here. We'll see you on episode 46 next week.
You can never see me. I can never be inside of that tree. I can never be inside that forest. You wanna see me, but I'm not seeing you. You wanna get where I am, then you can't find you. You can't find you. I don't want to the most of the time I cried to divide the characters when I got off in the world. Nobody get it off. Piece of the pie. If you want a piece of that, you can have a piece of the pie. I'll give you that. I'll give you that much. If you want a piece of this, I'll give you a piece of me. I'm off of your soul. Piece of me. I'll give you a piece of me. I'm off around by the grain of stars. Sometimes it's like some moves you have on every dance floor do. Real smooth, it's like the moves you have on the dance floor. Real smooth. If you want to think you're real smooth on the dance floor, it's real smooth. I like some moves on the dance floor. Christ be in you, Christ be in all, Christ be in God, all of us, be in us as God is in one in all, as one flesh, as one flesh. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. You're real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dude. Real smooth out on the dance floor, dance floor.
The Geometric View is a Love is Watching product. Love is Watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen. Thank you for joining us for episode 45. We'll see you on episode 46 next week.
mouth speaks life and death. Third, all of us. Third, give hope. Third, your life. Third, the cause. Love, life. Third, live it to the fullest.
As I look at the wall, as I look at your body, and I can see straight through with transparent golden scaling. The largest of the atom must embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Shout loud through the doors Shout loud, loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Shout loud for the glories of God. Shout loud. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary and Christian neurons, synapses and arrow entrance into eternity. I'm a courier of charismatic attitude, meters even meter, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be is a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, intermittent ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curving cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best. Could be micro-hacker, mackie, normal, open-minded, itsy-bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption.
Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about a girl, but about a goddess spirit. Get up, what's up? Jedi Chapter. It'll put up.
I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm in earth thing, I'm in earth thing, I'm in earth thing, I'm in earth thing.
To now be capable of elongating along the fibrinogens and to start constructing. There has to be enough charge built up and energy stored up. Of course, they look at it just in terms of ATP energy, but I mean, as we're talking about, actual literal electrons.
Yeah, a mass of electrons being provided to a body in space should increase. I mean, if it has a magnetic field already, it should increase its magnetic field. It should increase the temperature and the pressure of that body that body's interior, because it's a plasmoid that's running everything. That's pushing pressure on the inside.
What a frightening idea is if now that we're on a really powerful star instead of a small dwarf star, if the Earth is growing rapidly and starts to accelerate and goes through mitosis, whoever's living at the time of that, it's going to be real hell to pay.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
don't forget.
Like that apple that we showed earlier on the video, it's split in half or in thirds.
Don't forget, a star is just the size of a star is just the amount of energy it's being supplied. So if this area of space that we reside in, if it gets a boost of power, our star is going to grow in size, and so will our planet.
That's right. Glad we all agree. It's been a very fun talk, fellas.
Yeah, it's really good.
Very productive, I think.
I agree. I definitely agree. Yeah. So bats are pretty much everywhere across the globe. You know, to wrap it up into a summary, and they exist everywhere except for the poles. And when the poles change areas, the bats start hanging out in those areas as well. And yeah, I like what you said, Rick. Let's not forget that a star is only as big as its photosphere, which is its corona. So if the sun were to get charged by another planet, or even itself turn into the sun, which wouldn't happen because it would charge up a larger body around us first, it would instantly, all the a lot of the material would just turn directly into the photosphere as it burns.
Well,
And-
no, it wouldn't be able to charge itself. It would have to, that charge would have to come from outside.
For a
As
little
our
bit
sun
it
is
would.
so,
For a little bit
well,
it would, but as its
Well, yeah,
capacitance wanes, you know, it would basically start to fade. And we've seen stars do that, and they always have a funny explanation for it. There's some kind of gravitic explanation or something, but stars have faded. Most famously, of course, there were two stars at Sirius. And the Chinese have it on record, and the Dogon have it on record. And they're the only two civilizations that memorized that there were extra stars there. In fact, there were two stars that were sacred to the Taoists that have faded. And now we know they exist. And so they haven't figured out, you know, for themselves the why of it. But we have a good idea, I think. The star starved. Ha! Starved. Ha!
Starved.
It's starved. Oh man, I'm gonna look up. You know what? I'm gonna look up the etymology of starved and see if it has anything at all to do. Probably not, but you know.
So, well, either way, we know the Earth is.
Die, become stiff, to lose strength, motionless, stirred, to become stiff. It's all about stiffness. It's interesting.
Are you getting a stiffy over there?
Ah, a Sorbana.
Look at this plate, or so-called plate, right here. Look at that connection. That's cool.
There's a volcano that's worth talking about in terms of the tectonics. Zoom in on North Korea there. Zoom in pretty far on North Korea.
Hang on, what is this? Where is this?
Well, that's plate. That's Japan. Well, it's Russia. It's at the base of Russia as you head towards Japan. So zoom in towards North Korea. There's a really big volcano. Oh, we've gone way too far. North Korea's over by.
Over here?